Hey ladies, how are y'all?
Wonderful. How are you?
Great. Darra, how are you? Thank you for joining in with us.
Oh, you are so welcome. It is my pleasure. I'm doing fabulous. Excited to chat today.
Yay. If you're listening and not watching, these ladies look so beautiful today. So we're just going to get into it. So Darra, can you tell us about Simply Ordered Solutions and what services you have for moms?
Yeah, so I like to call myself a professional organizer plus. Okay, essentially, I'm an order and wellness strategist. And what I'd like to do is to help women live well, work well, and be more balanced. And so that is really obviously, yes, professional organizing services. But then, just after doing it for a few years, I saw that there was a need to serve women first of all, who were dealing with clutter that's not just tangible. And so that intangible clutter and stress, like that's what I always teach my clients is like clutter kills because stress is real and stress manifests in the body in a number of ways. And moms, as moms, wives, just women, period, we wear so many hats. We've got so many things going on. We're juggling everything. We have not learned healthy, self-care techniques, and we've got unresolved things that we've never really dealt with. It's just so much. And so really Simply Ordered Solutions has taken like just a wellness holistic approach to just helping people declutter so they can live confident, fulfilling lives.
Wow.
I'm interested.
Yes,
Let's just dive a little bit into this. Okay. So
yeah.
you offer services for the tangible and for the things that are not tangible.
Yes. And so the tangible stuff is like the stuff you see on the Netflix shows, your kitchen pantry, your closet, stuff like that. But then deeper than that, let's look at your schedule. Let's look at your email inbox. Let's look at all the things you're putting on your plate where you don't even have time to do the things you need to do, like get adequate sleep, exercise. What about meal planning? Who has time to meal prep if you don't even know when you're going to the grocery store? So productivity consulting is a part of that, and just making sure that you've carved out goals that are realistic. I am an overcoming perfectionist, so really I struggle with setting goals that are just unrealistically too high, and just not fair to myself to set the way I've set them. So just trying to help people, working through that. I'm in school to be a holistic nutrition and wellness coach.
Go
And
girl.
absolutely love cognitive behavioral therapy. And so I'm just an advocate, lifelong learner of that. And so just using some of those techniques and tools and just listening to people and just consulting with them just to see, where they're feeling frustrated, where they're feeling stuck, and then just creatively helping them work their way out of that. So that's what it is.
Dara, listen. So this speaks so loudly to us because with Operation Mist, when a mom has a baby, if she has not figured that part out before she has the baby, it becomes a nightmare to figure out afterwards. And it's not even that we are sitting there saying, oh, I need to organize this. It's that people are coming over to help. So we want help and we have no clue how to tell people to help. So they might wash the dishes, but don't know where to put them. They might wash the laundry, fold the laundry, but nothing is in order. And
Yeah.
so it's like you have support, but you don't have help. So then
Yeah.
our moms have we look at recovery in a big way. And recovery matters. And in the United States, we do not prioritize recovery. We are going back to work at 6 weeks, going back to work at 12 weeks. For the lucky women, we're going back to work at 6 months, and our bodies are still not recovered. And so if we could have that type of order and organization that you're talking about before we even get pregnant, then it would be smooth sailing, right? Because you don't feel that sense of overwhelm because like you said, it shows up in your physiology. So while we're sitting here helping moms make sure they're eating well, make sure they're hydrating well, make sure that they have good, healthy relationships, that they're saying yes to the things that they need to say yes to. There is so much more that can be done to keep our stress levels down. And if our stress levels stay low, because during pregnancy, the stress on our body increases naturally. But if we can keep it low in that domain, girl, we would thrive postpartum. We would not end up with all the issues that we have down the line. And it's a wonder, I don't say it's a wonder, but the heart issues that show up in women can show up to 5 months post-delivery. So you're wondering, okay, the baby's gone. What's the issue? You're addressing the issue with this, Darra, and it's a beautiful thing. I would be interested to know how you got here. How did it morph into what it is, and what originally inspired it?
Yeah. So I've always been just an organized person. I call myself like an organized pet rat because I don't throw away a lot of stuff. I keep a lot of stuff. I'm very sentimental. I've always had, just cards that people have given me and all these little, just little knickknacks and things. I keep that stuff. So I'm not the organizer that's going to say, just throw it away, but I've always believed in things having a home. And so if this is its home, I know exactly where it is. I can go right to it. I can pull it out. And so I think I did that naturally for years and took it for granted, didn't realize that I could help other people do that. And so graduating college, did a number of careers related to like nonprofits and just grant contracts, different little things. But found myself really just only happy being an entrepreneur, being able to have that flexibility and that freedom. So I said, okay, well, I know I'm going to go this route. What could I do? There's so many things that I could do. And so we settled on the organizing and, was doing that for a couple of years, just filling out a few different ways to help people. So I even tried my hand at virtual assistants a little bit, just because I realized I wanted to help people even with businesses, but I didn't so much want to be like just a virtual assistant. So, just doing some trial and error, playing around with things. I came to really learning that organizing could be so much more. I think on TV, and it wasn't even like cable, but I remember had to have been shortly after I had my daughter. I saw this show and it was called Hannah Help Me. And so this organizer, consultant, I'm not sure what she was really, but she was coming into homes and helping moms, like not just organize, but just kind of get the whole home in order. And so that started to plant the seed in me of even just like home management and just helping people on a slightly bigger scale than just organizing. And so fast forward a little bit, I've always been a health and wellness advocate, enthusiast, whatever you want to call it. And in 2019, my mom went to be with the Lord. She had a very short struggle with cancer. And I learned firsthand like what stress really does to the body, not just through her story, because I do believe that, she, as well as many women in my family, have never fully mastered how to deal with stress versus internalizing it. And it's something that my mom started to get a hold of in some of her later years. And it was actually one of the last messages she preached at her church on a Mother's Day. She said to the women that exceptional care belongs to the exceptional you. And so she was starting to get that and was just with the time she had left was trying to give it to every woman that she could, including myself and my daughter, her first and only granddaughter. And so she said to me one day, like, I need to apologize to you because I did not model that self-care for you. I didn't know how to, and I don't want you to pass that down to your daughter. And of course, I'm like, Mommy, you don't have to apologize to me. But what she did spoke volumes then and speaks even more to me now because just that whole message of taking care of yourself, like it was around that time that all the dots started connecting, you know? So it's like, okay, I want to help people. I want to help them be organized, but I want to do something more. I want to do something deeper. I have a passion for health and wellness. I want people to be healthy and to thrive in more than just their physical bodies, you know? This clutter that comes and affects people, it's like, when you're stressed, it manifests in your environment. And then sometimes that environment then makes you more stressed. And it just creates this vicious cycle. And I'm like, how do we break out of that and deal with the stress? And then like the other key thing that brought me to this point was in 2013, I guess I would say, is when I was introduced to cognitive behavioral therapy. I went to actually do an outpatient program at Coliseum. And it was an answer to prayer for me. You know, even being a woman of faith, I knew through struggling with anxiety and depression that God was a healer. That's what I believe, and I held on to that. But I needed some other tools to help go along with that. And so that's when I was introduced to the 8 dimensions of wellness, and that's when I realized how it all works together. And so now that's just what I want to do, is just to help people be well, you know, be organized, have order, but it just goes beyond just a closet or a junk drawer. You know, it's just bigger and deeper. So that's a long answer for how I've got here. It's been a 3-year journey, 3 to 4 year journey, but that's how I got here. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So can we go back, because you mentioned cognitive behavioral therapy, and a lot of people don't know like what that is, but it is a useful tool for so many people for so many reasons. So can you kind of just, if you want to, just highlight like what it was for you and how what it helped you with?
Yeah, what it helped me with was again just giving me practical techniques and some science as to, you know, how we work, you know, like how our brains work. You know, I remember in some of those sessions we would talk about even how certain thoughts are triggered and how, you know, how we can work to stop certain thoughts. You know, in a way it's a lot of what I've heard like growing up, you know, even in the church, but you know, it's just another perspective, if you will. But it's just doing what needs to be done to change your behavior, to unlearn and relearn behaviors. And I think that's what, you know, a lot of addictions and struggles and just, you know, bad habits, whatever, you know, that we are faced with. It's just learned behaviors. And so if we can unlearn the stuff that's not useful and learn the more productive stuff, we could go a lot farther and do a lot more. So that's what it was for me. It was literally turning off. Okay, I'm not going to think about this like this anymore. I'm not going to look at that situation like that. I'm not going to take that thought when it comes. I'm going to do this instead. You know, like just that intentionality. Like I didn't know to do that. Nobody ever told me how to do that. They told me to do it, but they didn't tell me how. And they didn't tell me, you know, that I could. They just like, you need to do it. You need to. And I'm like, I'm missing something here, you know, like fill in the gap. So
Darra, no, so this is beautiful because it really leads into one of the things that I admire about you the most, and it is your mental fortitude, but it is obviously very, very closely tied to your faith, and capturing thoughts is a huge deal, right? Spiritually, it's so important. And so you have done what a lot of moms have gotten into their heads that they cannot do. And I wouldn't even say that they've gotten it into their heads. It has been put into their heads that they cannot do it. And you've had a vaginal birth following a cesarean delivery, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So let's talk about that, because I feel like your mindset had to have had a lot to do with it. But obviously we won't skip to the second one before we talk about your first, princess. So tell us about your first birth experience. And I know it's a lot of question, but tell us about your first birth experience if you can.
Okay, so I smile and I kind of still shake when I think about my first birth experience, because it was not what I thought it would be. Um, I I was relatively healthy. I wasn't in the best shape of my life, but I wasn't unhealthy. Everything with the pregnancy was fine. I didn't have any complications, throughout the whole 9 months. She was full term. And the only thing about her was that she was face up. So I don't know what you call that in doctor world, I forget. But she was just sunny side up, as they say. But she was head down. She was in a good position. Weeks leading up to delivery, I was dilating, I was fully effacing, all that stuff was good, right? So my water broke like 5 something on a Friday morning, day after Christmas. And it was crazy because I had planned that day to wash my hair so that when I was in the hospital, I could be,
Right.
but no, I wasn't going to get to it because she decided.
Our girls will do that to us, Darra.
Huh.
Our girls do that to us. Yeah.
She said, I'm on the way. So water broke and, waddled to my husband because both my pregnancies, at some point I could no longer sleep in my bed. So I was on the couch. I was in the living room. He was in the bedroom. So I went to him. So we went, got everything in the car, went to the hospital, and they started to hook me up with all the things and check me and all that stuff. And all I can honestly say I remember about the day, because I cannot tell you, and that's one frustration. I cannot tell you what happened from 5 a.m. till about 7 or 8. Like, what did I do all day? I can tell you what I did not do. I did not walk around. I did not sit on a ball. I didn't get in a pool of water. I didn't do any of those things. Now, we came in with a birth plan, obviously with the expectation that some things may change. We had done the childbirthing classes through our hospital the months leading up to. So we felt like we had good information, good education, but I don't feel like we had the confidence or the knowledge to even advocate for specific things. This being our first pregnancy, we didn't even know what all to ask for, and what all to say or suggest or, any of that. We knew some basic things like I want to breastfeed. We knew I want the baby in the room with me and all this. But what do you do in a situation or a traumatic situation where those things aren't even an option? Now who's speaking for you, and now what's on the table? So fast forwarding, it came time to push. And I say it came time to push because I never had an urge to push. To this, like right now, I've had 2 children, and with my son, I had an urge that is undeniable. And I'll get to his story later, but with my daughter, I never had an urge to push. They were showing me that I was having contractions, and I did feel something. And at some point, I felt it enough to even desire an epidural. And that was after progressing for several hours, because I was trying to go as far as I could without medication. And so we did get the epidural, and I think that helped make me a little more comfortable, not quite as sick feeling, and I was able to get some rest. But then when things began to pick up, there was like, it said, well, you're fully dilated. These were the words. You're fully dilated. You're fully effaced. I guess let's start pushing. You ready? And I was like, okay, how do I do this? Because I don't even feel anything to like work with. I had no clue. So I started pushing, and I pushed for over an hour. And she would come down and she would go back up. And I just got exhausted because I don't even know if I was pushing right, if I was breathing right. I couldn't feel anything now because I had an epidural. Like, it was just a blur. And I remember them saying, well, it looks like she's in a little bit of distress. So if we're not able to push her out by 8:30 or maybe 9 o'clock, I forget what it was, we're going to have to prep you for C-section. At this point, I'm just like, okay, whatever. You know,
Wow.
like I did learn in that pregnancy that I had some uterine fibroids. I want to say 3 or so, maybe one kind of large one, and then a few little small ones. But they didn't, I never had painful periods. They didn't impact my ability to get pregnant. They weren't affecting her or the pregnancy at all. So no one was really concerned about them. And so I don't know if that was a part of, you know, what the uterus was all that it was going through in that time. But the decision was made. You know, we consented. We took me to surgery, and we delivered her successfully via C-section. Got to see her, sing to her, all that sweet stuff. And then I remember going to recovery. And in recovery, I saw my husband. Things were really foggy.
Mm.
And then I noticed some people around me, and they were talking about some bleeding. I'm like, okay. And then they finally came and told me, you know, you are still bleeding and we're not sure why. And I said, okay. And then they said, well, you know, we might have to take you back into the OR and open you back up and figure out like where all this blood is coming from, because it should have stopped by now. And so at that point, I just remember everything and everybody getting really far away and really dark. And I turned to this nurse who had just been a godsend. I wrote the hospital a letter later to tell them how special she really was. And I just told her, you seem really far away. And she told the doctor, and everybody like moved. Because at that point, I'm told my blood pressure was dropping, my heart rate was dropping, like I was on my way to critical care. And I was losing so much blood so fast. I forget how much blood volume I lost, but I did need 4 blood transfusions over the next 24 hours. It was something crazy, like somewhere between 70 to 80% of my blood volume. But when they took me back into the OR, I literally was just like, well, God, why am I scared? I'm a believer. So give my husband what he needs to take care of this little girl. He
Oh,
told me not yet. Like, yeah,
right.
you're not done. I was like, oh, okay. So, you know, I just lay there and they did what they did. And, you know, the story that I'm told is that my uterus had a hard time clamping back down. Maybe you can make sense of that for me. I even ordered my medical records after the fact just to read what they put in writing, because I just didn't understand what happened and it just wasn't clear to me. But over the next couple days, I was not able to nurse my daughter because I was fighting for my life. And so she immediately had to start on formula. I wasn't given any other option. I would have taken anybody's breast milk, to be honest.
Yeah.
But my husband had to do everything for her, especially that first week, because I couldn't even get out of bed without hearing my heartbeat in my ears.
Right.
So until I was stable and all my levels were good, they weren't letting me go home. But we did get home at like the end of the month. It was like the 26th we went in. Until the end of the month, we were about ready to go home. And it's crazy because there was another young lady when I got home, another young lady around my age who was having a little girl the same week, the same hospital, and the same thing had happened to her, but she slipped into a coma.
Oh, wow.
You know, by a miracle, I met her years later while
Mm.
organizing for her. Crazy,
Wow.
all God. And we had given to that family because we were just like, this story is way too close to home. And
Yes.
but it showed me even then how common it is for women to hemorrhage. My mother hemorrhaged with my older sister. I don't believe she hemorrhaged with me, but she definitely did with my older sister, and it was a life or death situation. And so my mom like for her to be in the waiting room when I was having my daughter, she was just a nervous wreck because she's just like, this is happening all over again, you know?
Yes,
So
yes.
even with our faith, that stress does something in the body, you know, like just because it was literally just history repeating itself. So it was not the most desirable experience at all. You know, getting home got a lot better. I tried to start nursing, but by then, you know, I didn't have really any support at home. My milk supply was just all over the place because my body was probably still in shock. So we weren't able to pump much of anything, suck much of anything. And don't forget, she's used to the bottle now and the formula.
Right.
So it was it was a desire our second time around that we be able to do that, because then, you know, her early years, age 1, age 2, you know, she had health issues that I know research has shown to be correlated with cesareans. And I'm like, Lord, I never wanted that to begin with, you know? So that is why when we knew, once we got past the fear of, you know, trying for another, why we knew we wanted to, you know, if we could, do everything for a VBAC.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, Jessica, you probably have a lot to say. I have a couple of things to say.
Go for it, Katherine, and I'll go after.
I just think, Darra, that because I did not know your story. I just knew that you had a traumatic experience. But what saddens me when I go through your story is, number one, is that you have more questions than answers still, 7, 8 years later, right? I think that one thing that's really important to us is that if a woman is told to do something, she needs to be told why. If you are fully dilated and fully effaced, everybody's fine. Why are you pushing? Why can't you wait? Right? Because now with your son, now you're like, I felt that urge, right? And so the question is, was it the epidural? And if it was, what was the harm in you waiting anyway? Epidural should not completely, like, you don't feel any contractions. It takes the edge off, but you should be able to feel that urge. And if you don't, the next answer is not set a time for when the baby can come, because then you talk about stress. Now you're sitting there like, okay, now I'm on a time limit. Our bodies were created to give birth. We just need time. And my big thing with women is, I've held the baby, you've held the baby for 9 months. Why is it that all of a sudden, when you're 10 centimeters and fully effaced, that there's this huge rush? Why is it that when the baby is at the opening, that now you have to push? We should not be rushed into anything, because once we abort the process, our body's natural process, then we end up in an emergency situation. And so when you said, everything it just started going so fast. And it should never be that you forget what happens during your childbirth experience. Like, hearing that makes me so sad. And then the fact that you weren't explained what happened. So I will explain to you what's supposed to happen. When we get pregnant, the placenta arises. It's not an organ that exists within us. And so blood vessels have to attach to our uterus so that the baby can get oxygen from us and blood, and so that waste can be taken away from the baby and excreted through us. And so the placenta is attached to our bodies. So when the placenta is delivered, meaning if I'm giving a vaginal delivery, I deliver the baby and then I deliver the placenta, right? So if someone is now delivering your baby and delivering the placenta, the expectation is that the uterus is going to do what it's supposed to do, which is it contracts down. So the uterus grows like 500 times its normal size during pregnancy. And then after you deliver, it's supposed to go down to its normal size. And those are contractions, which is why if you put a baby on your breast, it actually strengthens those contractions. So then that pressure stops your body from bleeding, where the placenta disattached, because once you deliver it, those blood vessels are still like open, so blood can still come out of it essentially. So the pressure that the uterus puts on it stops that bleeding. And so in my opinion, if you have a C-section and the uterus wasn't prepared for the baby, it's like an abrupt separation of the placenta from the body. So now the uterus is being called to action when it may not have been ready. And so now the pressure is not enough to stop the bleeding, so then you bleed more. So then once you start bleeding, if you lose enough volume, then that can send your body into shock, because blood carries oxygen and now your body is going without the oxygen that it needs to live. That is a scary, Darra, the moms that come on. So there's one question that we ask every mom as soon as she decides to be a Miss Mom. I mean, not as soon as she decides to be a Miss Mom, excuse me. If a mom reaches out to us, whether she decides to be a Miss Mom or not, we ask her to check her prenatal vitamins and make sure they have iron. Our hemoglobin levels naturally go down a little bit when we're pregnant, because now we're sharing our supply with our baby, right? And so for us as Black women, though, we are bleeding to death following delivery. So way before we ever get to delivery, we need to make sure that our hemoglobin levels are where they need to be, so that in the case that we bleed, we have enough reserves. And so I just think about you and the beautiful mom and wife and, business person and dancer that you are. And you could have lost your life. And then at the end of the day, your husband couldn't even explain what happened. And nobody slowed down to say, this is what it means for your uterus to not clamp down. That bothers me. That bothers me. And so the fact that you got to where you are to say, we're going to do this again. Darra, if you did it and you lived in that fear for the remainder of your life, you would never trust your body's ability to do what it was meant to do. And we see moms who are living with that now, and they are past childbearing age. So it's something that is very hard to come back from as a woman if you don't even give yourself the chance. But you faced death and still said, my God is able. Right? It's a beautiful, beautiful story. It's a beautiful story.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. And Katherine, you said what I wanted to say to explain what had not been explained to you about the clamping down of the uterus. And I think just your story is important because it highlights how serious having a C-section is. We're at the point now in the US, 1/3 of every birth is a C-section. And a lot of them don't have to be. And because it's so common, people think like, oh, I had a C-section, whatever. No, it's serious. And like Catherine said, it's an abrupt thing that's happening in emergency surgery that's happening to your body, whether it's planned or not. Like your uterus and your body is not prepared. Your physiology is not prepared for that. They're thinking, we've carried this baby for this long, we will deliver it. And, it's just an intervention. And I think it's just important to highlight that, and important to highlight the fact that the hemorrhage after childbirth, vaginal or C-section, is really what is killing a lot of our Black moms. And I'm so, so, so happy that you had that nurse that you could depend on, your faith, your family, and you're on the other side of it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Amazing.
Yes. Okay, now tell us how we got pregnant the second time. We know how you got pregnant the second time, but tell us about the second time around. What was different?
So my faith is a huge part of it, number one, because I knew I was afraid, and I knew I didn't want to live in fear. And the only way I know to deal with fear is through my faith. And we, even my daughter had been saying, really honestly, prophetically, that she was going to have a little brother for years, and God just really honestly confirmed that over and over. I, my relationship with God and is just one where, I pray and he speaks to me. There are times where, he allows me to know things. And I love that about being in a relationship with him. And I knew I had a son. That's the best way to explain it. So it's like, okay, I know this, but I'm afraid these don't match up. So I had to deal with that fear. So I started dealing with it, one, by taking better care of my body, like whatever I could do on this end, I had to go ahead and just start. Don't, like, not when I get pregnant, not like, no, before we try, I
Yes.
need to drop a few pounds to the very least. Start back some activity, just whatever, get my mind in the game, get the room ready, like
Yes.
all
Yes.
of that is our faith works. And so that's what I did. And we, let's see, actually, while my mom was ill, I was telling her, I need you to hang on because we're about to try for your second grandchild. And so, of course, when the Lord called her home, it slowed things down just a little bit, but not by much. Like when we went to have my daughter, we tried and I was pregnant. We tried for my son and it took us about 3 months. But my body had just been through a lot of stress. And, we just still were just, I don't know, I guess just trying to figure some things out. So got the word, test positive. All right. So then it made me kick it up another notch. Okay, let's make sure this diet is right. Let me be more active. I'm older now. Let me make myself be more active because I was not active at all with my first pregnancy. I was very active leading up to my pregnancy, and I actually had gotten into a healthy weight range right before we tried for my daughter, which I don't know if that plays a part, but it could have. This second time around, I had been carrying up some extra weight for a while that I knew was causing other things to go wrong in my body. So I just knew that to the very least, I needed to stay active this pregnancy. So I was on my feet, I was moving, I was drinking water, I was just everything I could do. And he was in the right position. He was head down. He was faced the right direction. Everything with him was good. And then on a Sunday morning, I guess this was technically the day before he came, I started spotting just a little. And I was like, okay, now this didn't happen at all with my first. So I said, okay, well, guess we're going to the hospital just to check things out. So we did. They checked me. I was dilated a little bit. So they just allowed me to, they plugged me up and it just kind of monitored him. But they did.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Okay, wait.
Yeah.
When did you decide was it never a question of having another C-section?
Well, no. As soon as we got pregnant and we're talking to the doctors, I asked them straight out because I did the research after I had my daughter. And I was like, I just think somebody just told me, like, if you have a C-section, the second one has to be a C-section. I was like, what?
Mm-hmm.
And so actually, I was especially the practice that I was at, they couldn't really give me any information, but they referred me to a midwife who was a part of another practice who was on a committee for my county who was working to get VBACs.
Girl, stop.
Yeah. She's like, I'm gonna stop.
I was like, wow.
Good.
So I literally have the email traffic from that midwife who was like, we are working to try to get VBACs in your county, in this county, but just stay tuned. Well, I just had my daughter, like I wasn't in a rush, but I was like, okay. And so then the other thing that I did after having my daughter was I changed practices.
Yes, I was wondering about
knew
that.
I wasn't gonna stay there because that's a whole nother thing. Like I get the rotation of doctors and all of that, but I was the doctor that delivered my daughter, I did not know. I've never met. She's never met me. And so I wondered if that played a part. For some reason, probably just because of my comfort level and just not knowing, in my record, I specified I only wanted to see female doctors. So what happened that Christmas weekend was the doctors for my practice that were on call were male. So I remember them giving me that option. Do you want to see a male doctor from your practice or do you want to see a female doctor? Well, I've never seen a male doctor before. So I was like, well, the female doctor. And so that meant, and I don't know if it was explained to me, this doctor is not one from your practice, but I just picked female doctor and that's who delivered. So that being said, just not liking how that was handled, I was just like, let me just try another practice, second time around. So and actually the practice that I moved to, this midwife, I want to say, was a part of it. So that's why I went this route. And I worked with a midwife at the first practice, but she wasn't the one that delivered my daughter, nor was her overseeing physician. So anyhow, knew that we were going to try for a VBAC if we could. I gotten the confirmation that they were allowed now, but it's on a case-by-case basis, all this type of stuff. So I was like, okay, so they would always ask me, well, what was your reason for having a C-section before? And so when I would tell them, like the story, basically it wasn't necessarily a fault of mine. They believed that my body would do things naturally on its own because my water did break and my labor did progress. And so they said, well, we'll be willing to try it if you want to try it. And I was like, okay, so I said, if it doesn't progress, then that's one thing. But if it starts on its own and everything and is moving without the need of intervention, then why intervene? So that was my mindset going into it. And, they fast forwarding back, when he decided to come, started spotting, went to the hospital, they hooked me up, checked him, he was fine, everything was good. I stayed just for a few hours, but they did allow me to just kind of walk around a little bit. And I was like, this didn't happen the first time. But they were like, yeah, just walk around. Let's just see if he will move down or come on his own or, just whatever. And I was like, okay. So we did that. He only nudged just a little. And then they said, well, not much progression has happened. You can stay tonight or you can go home. It's up to you. They said, if you stay, your doctor, we called her. She said she's going to do a C-section. I said, okay, well, I'm going home.
Amen. Amen. Right, Jessica. Go ahead, Jessica, because
This is something that we deal with a lot with our moms in Operation Mist. If you had a healthy pregnancy, right, your baby's not in distress, you're not in distress, labor is progressing, but maybe not as quickly as your providers will want. If you have an option to stay at home until things progress more, stay at home, because what is going to happen is a lot of unnecessary interventions that could put you at risk or your baby more at risk. Mm-hmm. And I don't know who told you that little insight. If you stay here, you're going to get a C-section, but that was an angel, because that happens a lot unnecessarily.
Mm-hmm. They told me openly because they called the doctor that was on call and they, told her what was going on. Because I was preparing to just go ahead and stay, and just labor at the hospital. But I guess because of not being that far along, she was just like, if you stay, I'm going to do a C-section. And that's her personality. She's just going to say it like it is. And so when they said that, I said, okay, well, we're going home.
Exactly.
So
Darra, listen, because we cannot move past this, Darra. Nobody should be told, like, if you're given that option and you were not as educated as you are, Darra, you would have been like, okay, I'll just stay. Do you see what I mean? And then you'd be in a situation where now they're going through the same cut for cosmetic purposes. And then your uterus is cut again. And so the likelihood, you talk about likelihood of hemorrhaging again, they make you feel like the likelihood of hemorrhaging is really, really high when you have a vaginal delivery. But how many have y'all actually done? None, because you keep convincing moms that no, you can't do this. Number two, there's no intervention between first pregnancy and second. You did that. You said, I'm going to be healthier. I'm going to be more active. I'm going to walk more. I'm going to stay hydrated. This is the conversations. These are the conversations that need to be had with moms. It's not, no, you can't have a VBAC. It is this is what you should be doing between this delivery and the next one, so that you are in the best position to have a vaginal delivery. You said no. And I am so happy that you said no and that you were given the option, because what could have happened when Jessica said that, Angel, the reason that she's saying that is because what could have happened is they talked to the person on the phone. They never told you that. Now the doctor shows up and then you're in a C-section situation and it's out of nowhere. And so then you have, and I have no issue with healthcare providers, I promise you, because I am one, but you have healthcare providers who claim that there are no OBGYNs who just decide to have a C-section out of convenience. There are some out there. You need to be wary of them. That's why we love talking to moms like you, so that you can let us know who are those, so people can steer clear, and then who are the ones that will give you a chance to have a delivery that is more safe, where the recovery is different, where your body can, if the uterus is like, yes, if the baby's ready to come out, then that means the uterus can, quote unquote, clamp back down. The uterus, it's like a whole process that the whole pregnancy, you never see a doctor saying, oh, let me go in and help this baby grow. No, that's God doing that. So then don't come now and say, let me take the baby's ready to come. My body will let you know when the baby is ready to come. So yes, I will leave this hospital, because all you're trying to do is get this room clear for the next person to come in. I have such little tolerance for that when I see your courage, your faith, your husband standing beside you and saying, yes, it was inconvenient to pack up this bag and come here, thinking that we were going into labor and now we have to go home. That's the type of support that we need. Yeah. Because if anybody along the way in our support team stops believing in us, then we're like, okay, well, I don't want to inconvenience him. Okay, I don't want to go home and then something possibly go wrong. No, nothing's gonna go wrong. Take my butt home. And when I progress a little bit more, I'll come back. And if you don't have that confidence, if you don't have that support person, there's a doula who can come to your house and she can sit and labor with you and help you, so that you know, oh, wow, you really are progressing. Now you can take it back to the hospital, right? Yeah. But please get back to your story. We had to pause and address this because it's happening over and over and over again. And moms are not standing up for themselves and saying no. And don't even get me on inductions. We're just going to put a pause in it right here.
This is why so many C-sections are happening and they don't need to be, and why so many moms are dying. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because, and if that had happened, your mindset could have been after that, after a second C-section could have been, you know, well, maybe my body wasn't made to deliver babies, right? Like it would, if I were you, I would be thinking like, well, maybe this is what was meant for me. Like I have C-section. And you hear so many women saying that. Like I had a patient once, and this is completely unrelated, but seen me for chronic low back pain, and she had 6 C-sections. You know, and just feeling like, because I had one, I had to get another one. People have that common misconception. And for her, it caused chronic pain for the rest of her adult life. Her children are grown, you know what I'm saying? And she didn't know that those things could be related. But just trying to reiterate for the people who are listening, like, surgeries are serious. C-sections are a serious surgery, and it has the potential to have long-term effects on your body. So long after the birthing experience is over. But yes, let's go ahead, Darra, with the rest of your story.
I wanna add that the education and the support that your program gives is life-changing, because while I wasn't in this program, even though we'd done the childbirth classes through our hospital the first time around, we did it again with my son. And when we went through it this second time, I mean, the same exact class, we now had our first experience in mind. So we were listening and taking notes for all the things. I mean, we had so many moments that were like, oh, because when you're a first time parent and you're listening, it's like some of it's going in one ear and out the other, but hearing it that second time around was like, that's what, and to a point where some couple of nights we got mad. We was just like, are you kidding me? We were supposed to what? They were supposed to have us what? My body's supposed what? Because it was just like light bulbs going off everywhere. And so, we literally we started a Google Doc on our phone. So he had it, I had it. We was adding to it, putting notes in it. It was a birth plan, if you will, but it was also a prayer list with specific things that we were going to be asking God for. It was notes of specific talking points that we wanted if we're in this situation. And if we're in this situation, this is how we're going to respond to it. So there was no question, like he and I were a united front going in this time. So that helped, and that positioned me to know, laboring down. Like I probably heard that first time, but I didn't know what that meant the second time. But no, I heard that the first time, but I didn't know what it meant. But this second time, I was like, oh yeah, we gonna labor down.
Yes.
Yes. And so that's what empowered me to say, I'm going home. And so we went home. Our daughter was with godparents. So I think she got dropped off at some point, because we didn't know when he was coming. So we did lunch like we normally do. I was around the house and we did everything we normally would do on a Sunday, just had missed church now. But, around 10 something, started noticing some contractions, but I've been having contractions in Braxton Hicks for a while. So it was like, okay, I'll watch it. About 11 o'clock, same day, spotting that morning, by 11 o'clock that night, I was like, I better text my husband, because once again, I'm on the couch, he's in the bedroom. I said, I better text him to come down and time these, because it seems like they're getting faster, they're getting stronger. So he came down, pulled out a little baby center app, he started timing them, and they were like every 3 to 5 minutes. And I was like, okay, that's what they always say. Let's just watch it. Let's just see. And then my water broke. And then I was like, oh, okay. So then I went to the bathroom. And then, while I'm still in the bathroom, the contractions have picked up so fast and so strong. Now we're in COVID times here. So my daughter can't come to the hospital. So it was like, okay, so that threw a wrench in our plan, because it was like, our dream when we had our second was for her to be there and all of that stuff. So, but I knew we were in a race with the clock, because I could just tell the way my body was progressing. And so, he got his parents on the phone, who live about 20 minutes out. And I was like, okay, they're not going to be able to meet us at the hospital. Have them come here, come to the house, because he's coming fast. And then he started to come so fast. I was like, hey, call the ambulance. I said, because you're not going to get me to the hospital fast enough. And I don't want us to have to get in the car and then for our daughter to have to see everything. As it is, I was on all fours trying to tolerate this pain, because it was nothing like my first. I never felt contractions like that in my first pregnancy. I never had just even an urge to push. I had an urge to push by the time I got on the ambulance. They came to my house. They got me on that gurney. They put me in the truck. I left my husband there because we were still waiting for his parents to come to the house. But I was like, listen, we already know what we need. We got it on the Google Doc, whatever. Like, somebody give me some flip-flops. Just get me to the hospital. And so I'm riding in the ambulance by myself. And I told this guy, I said, listen, I feel like I need to push.
Oh my gosh, Darra, oh my gosh.
Hold on, don't push yet. I said, sir, I feel like I need to push. And he was like, just hang on, we're almost there. So we get there. By the time I get to their triage area at the hospital, I'm throwing up. So I know from last time and from my course, we are there. You know, we are right there. And so shortly after me throwing up, my husband gets there. So, you know, my daughter is with grandparents and they're moving. They were like, yeah, she's fully dilated. She's fully effaced. Yeah, this baby's coming. And so we're moving to a delivery room. And I was just like, somehow in between breaths, I was like, ask them if can I have an epidural? And they were like, he said, ma'am, is she going to be able to get an epidural? They said, no, this baby is going to be here in like 12 minutes. And we're like, oh, we doing it like that? Okay. Not only are we having a VBAC right now,
yes,
also
yes,
getting any kind of medicine. And it's like, okay, let's go. And so it was just, I mean, I pushed for like 20 minutes. I pushed for over an hour with my daughter, and I pushed for like 20 minutes, if that, with my son. And he was here, and he was healthy, and he was fine, and he latched, and he nursed for like 90 minutes. And everything else, I mean, I ripped a little bit, but that was it. No hemorrhaging at all. Like the very thing that I was afraid of. It was like everything that we wanted, everything on that list. God did it. Every single thing. I was able to deliver with a VBAC vaginally, no medication, no intervention, no complications, was able to nurse him, everything. Girl. And so like with my daughter, I delivered her C-section like 9-something that night. I did not see my husband until 3:00 in the morning. And I didn't see her until daylight. So, but that was because I was in and out. My son, he was with me the whole time. Yes. Whole time. So that's my story. And I'm grateful for it. What that did for me, because that might be your question next. What that did for me going home, it was like, man, can't nobody tell me nothing. There ain't nothing on my body.
Yes.
You know, it's like I wrestle now with, am I gonna have another one? I can't. You know, it's like, I don't know. If another comes, cool. If not, I'm good. Because I've had both experiences. Yes. You know, it's not just about a girl and a boy. It's about, you know, the things that you don't want versus the things you always wanted. It's like I've had both. So I'm good, you know?
Yes, you can have another if you want to. You can have 2 or 3. You know,
that's right.
Everybody can do amazing things. And I think that kind of sums things up, you know, for anybody who is listening, who has had a child and that first experience was traumatic or seemed like it could have been a life or death situation. Do not go, just because of that, do not go into your second experience with fear leading your decisions. Yes. If you do, you will be more likely to have another bad experience. But if you're like Darra and you decide to deal with fear with faith, whatever you believe in, you can have a better outcome.
Yes. Yes. No, Jessica. Okay. Two things. Number one, Darra, can you please tell us, for the women listening, how much time was between when you went home and that 11 o'clock when you started contracting? How much Was it 24 hours? Was it, how much time was that?
It was just hours. Let's see.
Because remember, you said you woke up, you went to church. I mean, you did not go to church.
Well, yeah, I went to church.
Uh-huh.
But we were having an event that day. The service was going to start at 10. So I think we probably left around 10, left the church around 10 to go to the hospital, because that's when I went to the bathroom and noticed I was spotting. And I know they were out of church by the time we got out of the hospital. So I probably got home around 2 or 3, I feel like 3 or 4. Like
Okay,
just somewhere in the afternoon.
So it was in the afternoon around 4 one day. And you did not go into labor until the next night.
No, that night.
That night. So it was hours.
Mm-hmm.
I gotcha. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing. Like, if at any point they had said to you, okay, at 5 o'clock, if the baby's not here, we're going to have a C-section. At 7 o'clock, if the baby's not here. At 9 o'clock, the baby's not here. We just have to give our bodies time. Like that's
not that much time, just a few more hours.
And it was just a few more hours, Darra. And it made all the difference in the world. You talk about that latching. It is not a coincidence that your baby latched for 90. Girl, when you said 90 minutes, I was gonna jump up off this seat.
I was okay. Like, okay?
Girl, them boys be greedy, right? But the breastfeeding helps the uterus contract down.
And I felt that.
You can feel.
I could feel the contractions as he was nursing. Yes. And she was still down there cleaning up, sewing up, all that other type of stuff. And he was just there. Yes. And I could still feel contraction. It was like, yeah, you're going to feel those for a little while. You'll still feel those for a while. And I was like, wow. Yes.
This is why breastfeeding saves lives. When you separate mom from baby, you are effectively putting her at a disadvantage to live, right? And then you think about the physical separation between mom and son. All he hears for 9 months is your voice, your husband's voice. And so all of a sudden, can you imagine a baby being left alone in the middle of a room? Anybody who has any sense of humanity would say, wow, that nobody should do that. Whoever did that, left that baby laying in the middle of the bed by itself, should be put in jail for neglect. But we're sitting here as a medical system, separating a mom from her son for hours. It doesn't matter if it's 1 hour, 7 hours, 10 hours, the baby is used to being with you. There has to be something done to fix that separation. I don't know what it is. I understand that they say mom has to recover, baby has to be taken care of. I don't care if I'm unconscious, put that baby on my breast. I don't need to be there for the baby to get what it needs. I don't need to be mentally there. My breast and body will do what it's supposed to do. So we have got to figure out how to fix that part, because your story is so beautiful. Your story is so beautiful.
Thank you. And I just want to plug in, to anybody that's listening, like, I can't imagine the position that I would be in if I had everything that your program offers. Like I would be in an even better state, obviously, but like to anybody that's just wondering or questioning, like the value that you ladies provide, like, don't let there be any question, because, even, and this is just, I guess, to continue my story, like the days after delivering, we were good, but I did begin to have some abdominal pain and thought it was gas, like trapped gas for a long time. But about 3 days later, I guess it was, no, was it? I think it was like 3 days after delivering, or after going home, not after delivering, but after going home, I went back to the hospital, and I, first of all, had a UTI, and they did a CT scan and saw that the lining of my uterus was inflamed. So not endometriosis, but endometritis or something like that. So what I'm saying is I had begun feeling things even after having a VBAC, specifically having a VBAC. But I didn't know or have like the support people to call to even ask those questions, So to anybody that wants to have a VBAC, like I just feel like the support that you guys can provide and just your availability to answer questions for that postpartum period, like that is priceless, because what happened after having to go back to the hospital, I'm thankful it wasn't major. It wasn't a hemorrhage. It wasn't anything like that. They gave me some antibiotics, of course, for the CT scan. They gave me some contrast. And it's like, well, gosh, well, now I got to pump and dump because I'm not giving him that crap, So it was like, all right. So that kind of threw my feeding schedule off and just my pumping. And really, to be honest, I didn't really quite recover in terms of like properly relactating like I wanted to. And then I went back to work, and then, just all of that. So really the only part about my story with him is that postpartum part. I would have wanted that to be different. Delivery and everything was beautiful, but it's the postpartum part that I wasn't prepared for, because my first delivery was so traumatic that postpartum preparation was way in the picture. It was just like this second time around, the goal is this kind of delivery, but I didn't think about what I wanted things to look like postpartum. And so that whole recovery, just the education and then the support for that, that's what I wish I'd had in my second story.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. And thank you for being transparent about that, because we do postpartum recovery. When we think about how many times we're seen by a doctor when we're pregnant, and then all of a sudden we deliver the baby, we have nobody to ask questions to. And so we love being that for moms. We love being that for moms. So Thank you.
You're welcome.
This was so good. This was so good. Like I needed this. And I know a lot of people listening need this. And while we were just talking, I was thinking, did we define what a VBAC was? Did we say what those initials were? For people who are listening, that's a vaginal birth after cesarean birth. I think people might have gotten it, but just so you know, because people say VBAC all the time, and it's just letters if you don't know. So just so everybody who's listening knows that. So I don't know. I just think this is gonna help so many people.
Yes, it will. Thank you for sharing, Darra. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having me and allowing me to share.
You're welcome.